Hi, my name is Rita Nieman. I am a granddaughter of Charles and Teresa Sinkel, who lives a half a mile south of the Delano Dairy Queen, and Charles Sinkel helped build St. Peter's Catholic Church. My mother and dad's name is Ed and Mary Pearson, and I was born in February of 1936. I lived on a farm by Watertown for many years. First of all, it was with my parents, but my dad died in 1946, and my mother remarried during that time, and she passed away in 1949. She had a stroke, and she was taken to the Watertown Hospital, and Dr. Brathalt actually saved the baby that she was carrying. They waited till my mom died, and then they took the baby. So that's where my second sister comes in, whose name is Mary Moore. I also have two brothers and, well, two sisters. We lived on a farm by Watertown, and we had many chores to do: gather eggs, bale hay, milk cows. We had no inside bathroom. That was all outdoors. We had to carry water in to the house, plus we had to heat it up. We had no hot water heater. My brother and I both had a bad spell with ruptured appendix, not at the same time, of course, but Dr. Brathalt also helped us through that. We survived after being very, very ill. We had a large garden, and we canned all our fruits and vegetables, and we had canned meat. We didn't have any refrigerator at that time. We went to the Catholic Church in Watertown, and also after my parents died, then it was decided that we could not live on that farm with my older brother Clinton because he was too young to take care of us. So my dad's mother, Annie Pearson, she took us in, and my half-sister Mary Moore was in a homemade incubator for 6 months in the Brathalt Hospital. And when she was released, she was sent to my mother's mother, Teresa Sinkel, and she stayed there for 2 years. Also, I did a lot of horseback riding. A horse was given to my brother from Annie Pearson, my grandma, and so I would ride the horse. He didn't like the horse too much, but I did. And so we equally had enough work to do there. So when I was in the 9th grade, my one aunt decided I should go to live with somebody else and to make some money. And so Edith Sabula put me in one place, and then Joan Merriman found out that that wasn't a good place for me, so she put me in with Dick and Maria Polak, and I took my 9th grade in Delano High School. After that was finished that year, I was back to the farm and went to the Watertown High School. I met Bernie Nieman when I worked at the Green Giant factory in Watertown, and kept seeing him. And then I also worked in the Red Owl store in Watertown. But after that, I got a job at the Delano Granite Works. First, I was in the mail room with Eleanor Gustafson, Mabel Pica, Mildred Swanberg, and sometimes I had to run the copy machine, which was a very dirty machine. I didn't really like it, but we did our job. And Mabel would bring treats, and we'd all bring treats. So then Myra Seabart decided to resign from her job, and they trained me into the mail department. sorry, to the receptionist, which I had a lot of fun watching everybody go through the time clock and say hi to everybody. And so then when it was time for us to get married, the girls took me to the Copperstein over in Navarre as a shower present, the ladies from the Granite Works. And that was a lot of fun because in those days we didn't eat out very much. A lot of my duties at the Granite Works as a receptionist was to greet people and check to see if Don or Bert were ready to see different salesmen or a lot of company men that would come to see them. Also, Tweeton, he was in that front office in the beginning, but Deacon somehow moved into there, and I'm not sure if it was before Tweeton or after. I just have sort of forgotten that, but it was nice to be in the receptionist because I like people and I got to meet a lot of them, and also I like doing the switchboard and checking, connecting calls to the different people. I started the Granite Works in 1955 and I worked there until the end of July 1959, as I was expecting our first child. I also remember paging the fellows out in the shop when they had phone calls, and that was always kind of interesting to me because I could see them walking up to answer the phone. And also, well, Bernie and I, we raised 3 children which went to Delano schools, and they live out of town now, except for James. So, thank you.
My name is Alice Fink, and I was born on a farm 4 miles west of Delano on August 28, 1927. My parents were Peter and Mamie Yannick Jr. There were 5 girls and 2 boys. Chores were routine on an 80-acre farm, with parents keeping us busy with the rightful perceived notion of keeping us out of trouble. Some of the chores included helping with the cooking, cleaning, baking, hoeing thistles, piling wood, haying, and maintaining the garden. Thrashing time was a big event with a person who had the thrashing machine, going from one farming community to another. The neighbors all worked together, completing the threshing of grain. We raised all of our vegetables, and the chickens furnished the eggs. Pigs, cows, and chickens furnished the meat. My father's grocery list only included flour, sugar, and celery and bananas. We rarely visited a doctor. I remember Dr. Phillips and visiting Dr. Guilfoyle when I was about 5 years old. Dr. Shanahan was our dentist. Several of my siblings had their tonsils removed. Entertainment included the creation of different facets in a playhouse. Our close neighbors, George and Angie Huncha, took us to Montrose on Saturday nights to see outdoor movies, all westerns. Neighbors would visit and we would put on plays. We also played cards immediately after supper before milking time. Working with my sisters, we always made light of the work. We were all musically inclined, and this was a big part of our lives. In the 8th grade, I took piano lessons and taught 2 sisters how to play piano. I remember my parents going to dances. My grandfather Yannick played the violin in his band, and my father also played the violin. My parents alternated my brothers and sisters in attending schools. We went to country school, located about a mile from our home, or St. Peter's Catholic School in Delano. They pooled rides with the neighbors, in order to give us a Catholic education. I spent 4 years going to country school and 4 years at St. Peter's, graduating from the 8th grade from St. Peter's. The nuns made a positive, lasting impression, and also Miss Novotny, our country school teacher. Church was a dominant part of our family. My parents were dedicated to their Roman Catholic faith. The Church of St. Mary of Czestochowa was located about a couple of miles from our home, so that was our parish. Although we started out as parishioners at St. Joseph's in Delano early on, participating in the choirs at both churches was a big part of my life. High school was quite uneventful, as the 4 years were spent during World War II. Playing trombone in the band and sports events were highlights. The basketball team was outstanding. My friend Joan and her dad, Harry Kuka, took us to the out-of-town games. Mr. Peterson and Mr. Parsons were outstanding teachers. With gas rationing, we were deprived of many traveling events. I do recall going to dances on Sunday night at the Lake Sarah Dance Pavilion with a friend. This also included wedding dances, many of them held at the Roundup in Delano. The war was over in 1945 when I graduated from high school. In 1951, I started working at the Delano Granite Works Incorporated. My son Tom was 4 years old, and I was fortunate that we lived a half block away, renting a duplex owned by the Granite Works. In 1962, we moved a house from the freeway in Richville, Minnesota, to 420 Elm Avenue East, and that is where I reside today. From 1951 to 1956, I was a clerk typist at the Delano Granite. My duties included typing customer orders, preparing bills of lading for all shipments, assisting in preparing manifests, handling and filing all invoices, mailing checks, and ordering credit reports. In the duties of typing various materials, with a co-worker, Pauline Iversley, Lynn Schrader, a draftsman whose desk was nearby, commented, "How can you type and talk at the same time?" In 1954, I was a victim of cancer. My medical treatment consisted of deep X-ray and radium with surgery following at the Mayo Clinic. I am a cancer survivor. My medical checkups are a yearly visit to the Mayo Clinic. From 1956 to 1958, I was secretary to the sales manager. Secretarial duties including maintaining approximately 225 active salesman personnel records, tabulated weekly, monthly, and yearly sales volumes, compile statistics report for a weekly sales bulletin, and on occasion wrote the bulletin, assisted in coordinating and setting up monthly sales training sessions, helped promote sales contests, and was responsible for issuing supplies and selling aids to salesmen. A highlight in working in the sales department was when my co-worker, Ina Wood, and I were honored at a sales meeting held at a restaurant. We were presented with gifts of luggage. From 1958 to 1970, I was secretary to the president. In addition to secretarial duties, took charge of all incoming mail, acting as cashier, reported all workmen's compensation claims, and maintained health and life insurance records for office and industrial employees, including employee enrollment. Trained and supervised another employee in taking over some of the sales department duties, assisted the plant manager in compiling an employee handbook for plant employees. Many areas of the job was always a learning experience. We were all dedicated employees for the success of the company. After 19 years working at Delano Granite Works, I was hired at Hennepin Parks, now known as Three Rivers Regional Parks. I retired in September of 1989 after working 19 years at Hennepin Parks.
My name is Winslow, Winnie Sinkel. I was born about 5 miles east of Delano in Hennepin County on a farm. I did go to one class out there. The school is still standing where I went to school. And then most of my years were spent in Delano School. I graduated from the Delano High School. And I didn't do much in sports because I guess I always had a job. I worked for H.E. Keplinger. I worked for Keplinger off and on all those years while I was in school. And we did have a professor, Milt Hayden. He was a very good guy. He had us a few of us canning factory jobs during the summer. And he really took care of us. He was a very good teacher too. Of course, after graduation, then I went right in the Navy. I served. I was very fortunate. I served in. I went to radio school, so I was a radio man. That took up a lot of the time. By the time I got to going overseas on a ship, and the war was just about over. But I think I got to Hawaii when they said it was the war had ended with Japan. Then I continued to Oklahoma. Went through the 1945 typhoon over there. I lost the ship I was on. It kind of sunk on us on an island. And after the war, back in those days, my folks didn't put much emphasis on going to college, so I just went to work after that. Worked, I got in the fire department in 1950. And that time I was working for Hyman Hardware down in Delano, our own hardware. And then in 1960, I was elected chief. And I'm very proud to say I was very happy in that job. And at that I continued as fire chief till 1991. 1991 when I was 65, so at that time you have to off, so I got off at 65, but then I was fire chief till then. So from 1950 to August of 1991, I was on the fire department. After that, I've been retired. Did a little work for Western Gas in between. I've certainly managed to keep busy, and I've had a very, very happy. My health has always been reasonably good. I had a very happy life. Always had some disappointments, but basically I was married in 1950 also. My wife, we had 4 children. They're all living at Robert, Thomas, Richard, and Susan. They're all alive, happy. They're all living. I see the 3 of them around here. My son Thomas right here. Roberts lives here, and Susan lives in Mayor. And they have one living in Kentucky, which I'm in touch with at least once a week. And all I can say is I bought a house in 1956. I owned a home in Delano from 1956 to 2002. And again, I said I had a very fortunate life. Thank you. On that picture, that's on the front row, left to right, is Van Merriman. He was secretary for many years. Then is George Nib Schumacher, best fireman I could ever have known. He's on there as long as that. He'd do anything down there. The perfect fireman. Then next is Alan Sweet Swenson, and George Sharr, and myself, Winnie Sinkel. Richard Diddy, he was a long-time secretary for me. And Jim Yanakula, my brother-in-law, he was the fire chief at the end there. And then the back row, of course, Casey Van Lith, he was fire chief from 50 to 60. Franny Tyson. Then there's Charlie, Chuck Thies, Leland Schroed, Dick Rolfe, Leonard Schrader, my brother Leroy Sinkel, John Dusa, Pete Thies, George Plotnick, Bill Current, Art Zitzloff, Lauren Algers, Jerry Lanou, Wally Yannick, Ronnie Farniuk, and Joe Hayes. All very good friends of mine. That's it.
Hi, September 11th, 2006. How about that? My name is Clarence Bruhn, Clarence Edward Bruhn. I was born in Silver Lake, November 17th, 1929. Went to school there until the 2nd grade, which time we moved to a little town west of Hutchinson called Cedar Mills. Went to a country school there until the 7th grade, end of the 7th grade, and then we moved again to Lakeville. In between, I went to school at Hutchinson for about 6 weeks, then went to school at Lakeville until the end of my junior year when we moved to Delano. Finished my senior year here at the high school in Delano and started working at Delano Granite part-time, summer of 1946. My mother and dad were Frank and Frances Bruhn. Dad, boyhood days were St. Bonifacius. My mother was a Lemmerman, and they had farms in the Lindale area. I had 3 brothers, Al in Buffalo, Ralph in Buffalo, and Bob in Detroit, and they're all gone. They're passed away. I'm the last of the Mohicans. After graduating in Delano, I went to the Granite Works full-time. I was working as a crane operator, overhead bridge crane. Went on from there. We opened up I call it a small hardware store. Basically, it was a supply depot in the building. We had a very good maintenance crew, so we had plumbing supplies, electrical supplies, manufacturing supplies. And 1951, I went into the service. I was in the Air Force for 4 years. Got out the latter part of 1954, and then went back to Delano Granite. That time, I started working with Chuck King. Chuck was in charge of the plant, also in charge of the traffic department. We had retail salespeople in 14 states, and consequently we manufactured monuments here and delivered and installed them in the cemeteries in these 14 states. So I was training under him in the traffic department, and ultimately then head of the traffic department in charge of the monument setters and our semis, which delivered finished granite memorials and also wholesale memorials to other dealers across the states. Take a break. A little bit more of my private life. Say after getting out of the service in '54, I married Ellie Hansen in September of 1955, and we were married for 42 years. She passed away in 1997. We had 3 sons, Douglas, Bradley, and Gregory. They're all married. Interesting enough, they all had 2 daughters, so I have 6 grandchildren. 2 of them living in Arizona, and 4 of them living here in Delano. So after the marriage, I stayed with Delano Granite and went through the traffic department for many years. Went on from there into expediting and coordinating production and shipments as we got into the structural phase of the business. And that went on for several years. As time progressed, the company was sold, of course. Gilmer sold it to Wayne Field. Wayne Field sold it to Cy Zierden. And in the transition period, I kind of worked my way through different positions in the company and finally did end up being an officer of the company. And in charge of production and quarries and so forth. As things progressed, we went a little bit from bad to worse, and we were operating with older equipment. We did try and upgrade certain things. I have to honestly say, I think if Wayne Field would have spent more money in the plant rather than all of the fancy grand on the outside of the building, we might have had a better chance of surviving. But we were operating on borrowed money for a long time. For one period of time, the interest rate, like at 25%. You can't make a lot of money with old equipment doing that. And consequently, got to the point where we saw we were not going to make it. Cy Zern was the owner at the time. Filed bankruptcy, ended up having an auction, and the company then closed its doors about September of 1984. And I had the sad duty of being the last one to walk out of the building, lock the doors, and say goodbye. It's been fun. That's about it.